Now, you can't decide what these people are going to say until you've spoken to them. You can't know what they want out of the conflict until you've asked them that question. And to an extent, we try and break that down. There's a big map, a big sort of spreadsheet, if you like, at the end of the report, which looks at all these different groups and looks at their agendas. But until you really go out and talk to them and engage with them, it's going to be very difficult to know how to bring them together. And that really hasn't happened up to now.
Great. Thank you. And Jerry, please, if you'd join us.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Peter. And I must say at the outset that the job that Peter's done in trying to assess the situation on the ground in many of these areas is really quite remarkable. And kudos to him for what I think is an extremely useful and hopefully ongoing contribution for people who are trying to understand the issues. Just make a few general points. One is that I certainly agree with Peter's observation that the situation in Yemen is complex and that it is not particularly useful to look at this as a binary conflict between two sides. Don't have any disagreement with that at all. Also agree with Peter's characterization of Yemen as a chaos state, as one where you've never really had, and Steve can certainly speak to this as well, you've never really had a strong central government that was able to control territory throughout the country. It's always been dysfunctional and fractured in that sense. I think that some of the observations that Peter's made in his report about some of the disincentives to resolve the issue are, again, very important for us to take into consideration. Things like the economic disincentives that many elements within the conflict have to seeing an end to it. I mean, the fact of the matter is, as is well known, a lot of people are making a lot of money by seeing this war continue. And I think that Peter's success in quantifying some of that is quite useful. But I'd also make the point that many of the things that Peter is remarking on accurately in terms of the situation that we're in today, in fact, are not different from the situation that we were in 2011, 2012. The dysfunctionality of the central government, the fracturing of the society, the existence of a number of different centers of power within Yemen are all issues that we were trying to address in the original effort to resolve the Arab Spring, the 2011 uprising against Ali Abdullah Saleh, and that many of the mechanisms that were developed primarily by the Yemenis, and we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the GCC initiative, by and large, although there was a heavy international role in trying to help bring the sides together, nevertheless was a Yemeni process. It was Yemenis who came up with the key elements. It was Yemenis who described the outcomes that they were seeking in the GCC initiative, and the implementation was by and large by the Yemenis. But there were efforts back then, and I did want to note that we're just about at the 7th anniversary. I think in the next couple of weeks we will celebrate the 7th anniversary of the beginning of the Arab Spring in Yemen. But there were efforts throughout to try to resolve some of these issues. And certainly some of the structures that were created, like particularly the National Dialogue Conference, indeed were aimed at doing the very kinds of things that Peter is saying that are important. There was a strong effort to try to bring in outside voices, not only women and civil society and youth, but also tribal elements. And many of those elements participated in many of the different activities. Many of them were present at Tahrir Square as part of the opposition to Ali Abdullah Saleh. The Houthis, tribal elements were all there. They were all included in the negotiations. They were all part of the implementation mechanism. But it's also important to note that you can't draw a bright line between the binary, the political parties, the GPC and the JMP a few years ago, now the Houthis. You can't draw a bright line between them and these other elements that Peter is talking about. And I think that Peter is very good at connecting the dots in the sense that he understands and articulates the very complex relationships that exist between the GPC and the tribes, Islah and the tribes. They all had very strong tribal elements. Islah had a strong relationship with the Hashid Federation, as did the GPC. Bakil is a part of the political process. So you can't say if you're dealing with the political parties, you're not dealing with the tribal elements, you're not dealing with women, you're not dealing with youth. That's not exactly correct.
Who's